Anwen fell to the floor of the chamber, which vibrated more and more with each step she took. Soon her entire body was vibrating. It made the air shimmer and shake, tiny molecules of matter dancing around in the odd light. She also felt like she was being taken apart and rebuilt from the inside out.
Find her and speak to her.
She whispered as she drew closer to the crystal. All around, stone-like statues of various dragons kept a silent watch of her progress. Despite their presence, she felt small and alone.
Don't hurt her.
She told herself.
What am I doing? Maybe Daphne's right.
Thinking about just turning around, the image of her mother entered Anwen's thoughts. From there, the words she'd spoken outside the mountain came to mind.
Just remember who you are. You are the last keykeeper. You are my daughter.
Anwen looked down at the ring around her finger. The green gem seemed to sparkle in the low light.
You are my daughter.
Tears leaked from her eyes as she thought about everything that had led up to this point. As the images flashed through her head, her clenched hand tightened.
No.
She declared.
Mom's right. I am more than just some person who stumbled into a bad deal. I am the last of the keykeepers. I am the heir to the Kaido name, and somewhere out there is a dragon who I'm madly in love with. I won't let it end here.
With this declaration, Anwen strode forward. She headed directly towards the area she remembered from her dream. Once, a long time ago, a sword had been forged there, from the crystal that once more hung around her neck. Her footsteps echoed around the chamber as she moved, dust kicking into the air. Having reached the place where the forge had stood, Anwen paused to look around. The tingling in her bones continued to grow stronger. She felt as though the hairs on her head were standing on end. She was almost there. Walking further, she noticed the largest of dragons turned towards the crystal. He appeared to be composed of white marble, but there was no mistaking the majestic curves and lines. This was Kern, and to his left stood the silver-green dragon she'd come to think of as one of his lieutenants. She had arrived. Tyler felt the inner urge to transform growing. He didn't need his dragon sight to realize what was going on by the gates. A dark aura flooded the area, but he couldn't do anything about it as Mr. Millard attacked him like a madman. Looking off to one side, he could barely see Courtney as she lay against the stone floor. She was still trying to defend herself, even though he could tell she was hurt. Walter had disappeared, but he heard the sound of one of his projectiles hitting home. How much time had passed since he'd silently called out to Anwen to hurry? A few seconds? Several minutes? Hours? He wasn't sure. With the press of Mr. Millard's attacks, he found it hard to concentrate on much else. Tyler's anger rose to the surface.
Enough!
He let out a ringing blow as he picked up a shard of rock and asked it to transform, according to his needs. With a well-aimed throw, he pinned Mr. Millard to the ground with a stone spear. The man's blood spilled to the ground from the wound in his chest.
Get to the gates!
Tyler cried out as he flew into the crowd of recovering mages. He didn't look back. Anwen couldn't help but look up in awe as she stared at Kern's immobile face. Even trapped in stone, there was something regal and majestic about the near him, and his size. It was more than enough to make any mortal quake. Even her dreams of him hadn't prepared her for the reality of his dimensions.
Speak the word.
She reminded herself in a whisper.
What's the word?
She looked around, as if it might be written somewhere, but there were no words written that she could understand. The word will come to you, Kern had said, but where was the word?
Calm your mind and listen. Having soul sight is not nearly enough. You must still be able to listen and hear.
Tyler had told her that after she'd told him about her dreams and the continued oddity with her vision. She knew he'd been telling her something important.
Calm your mind.
Taking a deep breath, Anwen closed her eyes.
It is the hour of the mage.
A tiny voice said from her memories. Who was that child? Focus. She tried to quiet her thoughts. Daphne would have rejoiced over their being so scattered. But then Anwen came to a realization. Daphne didn't exist. She was only a creation of her fears. She only existed if Anwen let her. She had power over her and her own mind. Anwen could be anything she wanted to be, and she wanted to be at peace. Opening her eyes, Anwen felt something strange inside. It was almost like mirth bubbling over, but 10 times more powerful. nor did she feel the desire to laugh, but it was a glorious feeling, one she definitely never felt before. It was warm and free. A blue glow shone from the chain around her neck, and she pulled out the pendant. The key dangled in front of her eyes as she stared at the glowing crystal. Had she looked at herself in a mirror, she would have realized her eyes were alight with a golden hue. The blue crystal clinked against her mother's ring as Anwen clasped it in her hand. She removed the chain from around her neck. Green light flashed from the circle around her finger. That light mingled with the light from the key shining through her fingers. Anwen turned back to face the Nirim, the key held high in one hand like a torch. Unbidden, words came to her mind.
Enhad matanin! Enhad!
The sound of rumbling filled the air as the ground shook. Anwen was thrown to the ground. Dust and stones seemed to fall like rain. She had to cover her head to keep from breathing it in. Curled in fetal position, she did not see the stone statues begin to move. They shook off an outer layer of rock and precious stones. Roar after roar filled the massive chamber, echoing through the vast cavern. The sound was so loud, Anwen felt as though her ears would never hear again.